morning, friends, and welcome back to this edition of the Mint Techcetra podcast. As usual, you'll see a very energetic Shouvik who is gearing up for the India AI Impact Summit to be precise, right?
Impact
It's
Summit.
on, yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. And it's on the 16th of February. That's a Monday. So Shouvik is fully geared up and he's going to talk to most of the world leaders and global CEOs. I'm sure you've lined up some exclusive interviews for us.
It's yeah, I mean, I think there's so much happening, and there is this exhaustive agenda. And actually, for this one time, you see most of the top tech CEOs to be down in India at the same time. Dario Amode is going to be here, Sam Altman's going to be here, Sundar Pichai, Demis Hassabis, Jensen Huang. So pretty much five of probably the world's top 10 names in tech and AI and tech in general are going to be in India. Along with that, I think the government's confirmed 14 heads of states are going to be in New Delhi during next week as part of the AI summit, and multiple embassies are hosting different sessions as part of that. So yeah, a lot of hoopla, a lot of hype, a lot of running around, a lot of noise for sure. Of course, we've Leslie, we've seen these events play out before, so we always kind of end up taking a skeptical view at it. But the at least from the government point, I think they've really gone all out with the Impact Summit to
I'm
try
not
and make an
skeptical
impact.
about it. I am just, I would say I'm being a bit circumspect for the simple reason that, whenever there's too much noise about any particular subject, it takes a little time because what is happening is you're not getting much of a breather to digest the kind
Right,
of stuff that is happening around, and it's extremely important in these times, especially given the the speed at which AI is accelerating. It's extremely important to sit back, digest the facts, understand what's happening, and not be carried away by the hype. So
right.
it's not the skepticism, but I think as a journalist, I think we have to be sort of wary about certain things and not get carried away by the hype. But I would also suggest ask our viewers and listeners also to take a considered view. Always sit back, reflect, and then work out. Like for instance, let me give you some examples about this. We used to talk about Bitcoin. Everybody got carried away by that. Those who got carried away by the hype are today paying the price. Okay, it's not
Right.
that people have not earned their money, but it's always a very small percentage. So if you know what you're getting into, you should get it. You should do a thorough analysis of it and then understand where it is moving. Another example
Right.
is that of blockchain. Remember the hype around blockchain. Okay,
Absolutely.
now with AI, time and again, I myself, you and I both have been talking about this. We agree that it is there in every device. It is in our homes, it is in our
Right.
smartphones, it's in our banking, it's in the traditional AI is very mature. Okay, it has become part of our systems, part of our daily lives. Has it increased productivity? Has it increased efficiency? Yes, of course, because it has become part of an entire process. But it's a well thought out thing, and it is being adopted by enterprises very sensibly. What happened with Gen AI and now agentic AI, which can take actions on on users' behalf? It can act in a semi-autonomous way. It can act in an autonomous way. That is where you have to be a little careful, and that's exactly what we're discussing. So, viewers and listeners, to give you context, I mean, before we talk about, I would love to pick Shauvik's brain on what he is looking forward to as far as the India Impact Summit is concerned. But before that, something very interesting which Shauvik himself also has covered at length, both of us, I mean, we have written about it, is the new law, the Indian IT rules that have come up 2026. To give the readers a context, till even say I think a couple of months back we were talking about the AI governance guidelines. Then we spoke about the notification of the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, the DPDP Act. It's easier to remember DPDP rather than that entire acronym, spelling it out.
Right.
And both of these were framed as, a techno-legal framework. You remember we have been using that word, which,
Right.
speaks about compliance, to encourage innovation, nudge companies to build safety into their system, embed it into the design at the design level itself. But most of it was voluntary, Shouvik, if you remember. Now, suddenly,
Right.
with the amended IT rules, I mean, we just went on with all those, the list of what should be the platforms must remove non-consensual intimate imagery, deep fakes, etc. But all within 2 hours. So earlier, what it was, something like 24 hours that they had given them.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
So
the change in timeline. Yes.
imagine now, to 2 hours of receiving a complaint, unlawful content would have to go within 3 hours of a
In
government or court order.
Right.
AI generated content must be clearly labeled. Uh, you have to prevent the creation of those spread of the child sexual abuse material, which is CSAM, explosive related content, fraudulent deep fakes. I think it's a very, very good sense. And I think what I liked most was a point that you also highlighted in your copy was that user complaints must be resolved by the grievance officers within 7 days for accountability. So that was
Right.
a very important thing. I was
Right.
looking at some of the global precedents for that. So I had listed it out. So one, of course, you see Germans and NetZ DG, that gives platforms 24 hours to remove manifestly illegal content. Then if you look at the EU's Digital Services Act, they also sort of, demand compliance at the earliest, but they have not given you a deadline.
Right. They haven't prescribed per se.
Then UK also emphasizes systematic risk mitigation. Australia's e-safety regime allows a 24-hour takedown notice. US is sort of, hands-free kind of, from a federal structure. But yes, it has got its safeguards over there as far as the AI Act is concerned, but it doesn't give any deadlines. Now, what effectively turns India's 2 and 3 hour deadlines, they become the strictest globally. So, from my perspective, the intention is laudable, but execution will remain a challenge. And if you notice,
Right.
even in our main edit today, we have lined up a lot of these execution challenges, and you also may
Right.
want to touch upon this. Let's have your thoughts on this.
Right, Leslie. And no, I absolutely agree. And in fact, in today's edition, which is the 12th of February, we did run a story mentioning that, of course, companies are stating that, uh, rather, everybody around the companies as well as the companies, they are of the viewpoint that, you know, compressing a 24-hour content takedown window, which also, interestingly enough, 24 hours was once again one of the shortest takedown window times in the world even before.
Yeah.
Um, but one valid point, in fact, something that was raised recently by one of the stakeholders who was a part of the lawmaking process, was that, AI content is such that it is generated in seconds, and once it is generated and put out on social media, it actually takes only a few minutes. It's probably a matter of an hour before, a problematic content is spread online and is all over the place, and something that can be propagated on WhatsApp and so on. So the Indian government's thinking is that we need to act according to the times and the needs of the technology. So that is probably the reason why they shortened the timeline of takedown from 24 hours to 2 hours. The intention is, of course, worthy of applause, but of course, the question remains that they've given companies 10 days to start complying with the law, or otherwise they are liable to face litigations. And I think that is something that is receiving some amount of criticism, that,
But
at the end of the
Shavik,
day.
let's get back to your statement, which you spoke to that expert and was mentioned that it goes viral very fast. That was the same with the internet, but the speed at which it goes viral today is, 100x higher than what it used to
Absolutely.
go earlier. So I
Absolutely.
think we all agree with that. But the point is, even then, a 2 hour takedown notice will fall short. because by then
Right.
it would have been posted, reposted, repurposed, you know, in different forms and fixtures. You really won't have much control on what had happened. So even a 2 hour window for
Right.
if one were to argue would be very short in if we were to take that. That
Right.
I think is going
Uh,
to be the issue out here.
Right. And of course, so I mean, everyone's agreed that from the first draft, when the government had recommended the 10% labeling thing, I think one of the key criticisms back then was that this is very prescriptive, and mandating a certain percentage would mean that for every piece of content there has to be some amount of really specific scrutiny and scanning, which of course, Leslie, you and I would understand, in technically speaking, is far more difficult than just adding a label to any kind of content that's generated through, say, a chat gpt or a Gemini, because in that, machines can read their own metadata between each other and put a machine generated label, which is much easier. So I think the AI law is of course, the intentions are absolutely right, and but it is going to be interesting to see how
How?
um, implementation really plays out. We're going to see from the 20th of February, and I do have certain reservations in terms of whether the actual implementation on ground can really work the way the government has mentioned. um, a lot of advertisers and creators have mentioned that uh, this could kind of significantly hinder their industry. But of course, with every technology, you see both appreciation and criticism. Um, but everybody seems to be in a little bit of a wary wait and watch kind of a mode, because even the tech companies haven't really gone all out and written to the ministry and pushed back broadly so far. So I think that's where we stand from a consumer standpoint. I think it's a good move,
Yeah,
as long as it works.
see, I think it's extremely important to address the AI harms. Now, even if it's going to be difficult for companies to implement it, we have to understand that if they're going to make money from these kind of AI tools, then they better figure out a way also of solving the issues.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, regardless of how we look at it, the metadata itself that can be stripped by any AI tool. So what can be done positively can also be done negatively. So this very same tools, if we, if you remember our conversations around cybersecurity, that those who use AI tools to sort of identify cyber attackers have to remember that the cyber attackers are also using AI tools. So,
Right.
these things keep on happening. My issue is not so much about whether we are trying, because I think it's extremely important that government step in and these regulations have to be there. See, there will always be these trade-offs of how I mean, we have had these kind of debates over capital punishment. Now people say that okay, capital punishment is not good. Some will say capital punishment. That is
Then
how
some, in fact,
society.
will say that capital punishment has really worked in certain
Exactly,
countries.
so that it acts like a deterrent for rapists and all, blah blah. But the point
Right.
is, at any given point in time, these pulls and pushes that happen, they help society evolve into, you start evolving as a society if you start listening very carefully, and this is exactly what's going to happen with these AI safeguards. And now
Right.
my issue is not so much about the child sexual abuse and all, because that is absolutely needed. Okay, let me be clear about that. Those are areas that should not, non-consensual imagery, etc., that should not, because it destroys reputations built over a period of time. It sort of leads to a lot of mental depression. It leads to many other things that we don't account for. But the problem is, if these kind of mechanisms are used for culturally sensitive content, then you have an issue. Because as I say, what is satire to one may not be, maybe blasphemous to another. So
That's
especially in
correct.
the context of religion, especially in the context of caste, it becomes very very tricky. I think a lot more thought will have to be good, but at the same time, the governments have to take a stand somewhere. Somebody has, whatever policy you come up with, somebody is going to criticize it because it doesn't suit
Of
their.
course, of
So
course.
that is bound to happen. But the
Right.
interesting part is that, if you connecting it with the the India AI Impact Summit, is that this was unveiled just days before these world leaders and tech CEOs gather in New Delhi for that's on
Right.
Monday, the
It
16th
also
February.
seems to be a statement of sorts in terms of trying to
Exactly.
showcase the approach that India is taking. And it's
Absolutely.
interesting because it comes in the backdrop of the India US bilateral trade agreement, where the US has in fact highlighted that digital trade barriers must be removed. And interestingly, this is sort of a move that doesn't exactly go in favor of, the likes of Meta and Google and YouTube and X, which are in fact four of US's biggest tech exports to the entire world. So it would also be interesting to see how they react. But Leslie, I also want to get your opinion on one small thing before we move on to the summit, which is that one of the key points that have been raised since the law was notified is that even before this, even if you take the longer time spans, there were these takedown rules and timelines and grievance redressal officers available to people for problematic content online. But how much of it has really been made use of by the public? How much of it has really helped in terms of the ease of reporting and access to law by the common citizen is a question that I think is it probably takes a I don't know the answer to it because I
No,
honestly don't know how
I
many
also
people
don't
have.
have. I don't think anybody has an answer. It is exactly the point from where the skepticism arises, because
Right,
each and every time we talk about adding to the rules that already exist, we already have the
right,
rules. In fact, the government
right,
itself has acknowledged that the Indian IT rules were strong enough, which is why we do not have a separate law for AI. If you notice,
right,
because the Indian IT rules themselves are so stringent that they can easily handle. In fact, actually, sometimes there is this danger of over compliance because of
over
the shop
regulated.
windows and
Right,
overreach. Now, to
right,
avoid all these things, many of these rules have been relaxed over a period of time. Some have been adjusted, tweaked here and there, this thing. But effectively, if you look at the stats, how many people have, how many takedowns have actually happened? If you remember, we used to have these
that's exactly
you
right,
remember these, we used to have these transparency reports. Google
right.
transparency report, then it
Yes,
was called Facebook transparency report when it
they're
was.
still there. In fact,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So you had these transparency reports. Now it's a meta transparency, and so
right,
these they tell you exactly the amount of times the government has sent an order and how many times it has been acted upon, etc. Those kind of things. But here now, if you look at, take for instance, a grievance officer has to address it within 7 working days. That's exactly what they have said, from 15 days to 7 working days.
right,
How
right,
exactly is the grievance officer going to do? What are the qualifications? If I were to ask, the first thing I would ask, what is the qualification of the grievance officer? If you're going to
right.
put any Tom, Dick, and Harry out there who doesn't have an understanding of how the net works and is just a bureaucrat, you'll just simply end up adding to the layers of bureaucracy. You are not going to
Right.
come up
And
with
there
any
is
kind.
no right,
Exactly.
and there is no standards recommended for what exactly should a grievance officer be in terms of
And
education
what are
or
the qualifications of the grievance officer?
right,
Does the grievance officer understand law? Does he
right,
understand technology? You are not going to get all these kind of qualities in one person, right? So the grievance
right,
officer is also at the end of the day going to use subjectivity, right? A subjective
right.
approach, and that is where the danger lies in,
That's true.
because every time you look at an AI model, the first thing you ask is, what about bias and what about context, right? These are the two
Right,
major questions that we ask. Same
right,
with human beings. Nothing changes on
right.
the ground, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If I am from a particular caste and suddenly there is say I'm okay. Let's start with the lovely example. I'm an agnostic, for instance. Okay, now
Right,
anything about religion is not going to disturb me really. I might just take a very
right.
bird's eye view and say, well, so what's the problem in that? Now that is
Yeah,
my bias. which is dangerous because when you're actually somebody's talking about a takedown, notice that it has hurt his her religious sentiments, you just understand the implication of that. I'm an agnostic, I don't understand what's happening there because
Right.
I cannot relate to it. And likewise, if somebody has made something in jest, say somebody from another religion is talking about a completely different religion which they don't have any understanding about. Okay,
Right.
so that is what. So when it comes to child sexual abuse or certain kinds of deep fakes and all, like for instance, when you see a deep fake of Nirmala, the Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, talking about investing 50,000 and 100,000 rupees, a common sense tells you that it's a fake. Or you find Mr. Mukesh
Right.
Ambani talking about investing, it's a deep fake. Now many people
Right.
unfortunately don't understand that these are deep fake. Now these kind of things need to be taken down immediately because these are
Right.
extremely misleading. Or you find some a news anchor sort of giving you financial advice and all, that it is a deep fake, but maybe because of our backgrounds. But uh,
Right.
on the street, if somebody trusts a particular name or a brand name, they will find it hard to understand. They might say, now these are the kind of things
Right.
that mislead people and should be removed. There's not much of context or much of these should be clearly done. But when you
Right.
come to culturally sensitive issues, that is where subjectivity is introduced, and that is the
Right.
danger.
Right. And I wonder if in these when you speak about the culturally sensitive issues and so on, I wonder if the laws are going to hold up
Never,
in
never, never.
such cases.
No, so let's be honest about it. Even in the courtrooms, they have not stood scrutiny. You find that
Right.
a judge could be from a particular car. Yes, they are supposed to be neutral, but human nature is such. Let's understand it. It's not going to be neutral at any
Right.
given point in time. Like, say, for instance, you and I. Now we are journalists. We come with a skepticism bias. We have learned. Please understand. In our schools, what were we taught? That dog bites man. Remember how we started? Dog bites man, not news. Man bites dog, news.
Right.
Right? Much of it is sort of changed, but people still stick to that traditional way of looking at. No, this is not news. This is news. So that bias
Right.
is already there. Algorithmic bias is just a translation or the higher order of this or the lower order of this, whichever way you want
Right.
to look at it. So we
Right.
all have, like, we have intellectual biases. Somebody else has a different kind of biases. If you ask a farmer about AI, I'm sure the reaction you'll get is just a blank look at it, even despite the fact that you're saying
Right.
that AI is being used in agriculture. It's saying, see, is
True.
my is my crop yield improving? Am I getting a higher crop yield and a better quality crop yield? Am I going to get more money for my produce? These are kind of factors that we need to look at. These are common sense factors which are very uncommon actually.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's a great point to segue to the summit because Leslie, I want to draw our listeners' attention to the fact that I think sometime in early last year, when China came out with its DeepSeek, and DeepSeek created all sorts of hype and
Yes.
everything. Um, India very vocally told the entire world that by the end of 2025, early 2026, India will have its own DeepSeek moment. But since then, in the past 12 months, a lot of things have changed, and a lot of strategies and viewpoints and opinions have also changed to the point where on 29th of January, in a press roundtable, Ashwini Vaishnav, our IT minister, he happened to mention that it's not necessary that India goes out trying to build large language models and these sort of massive foundational models like Claude, like GPT 5.3 Codex or Claude 4.6 Opus and things like that. And he acknowledges that these models are massively expensive and really difficult and long and time consuming to build. And he made this point that everybody he speaks with, including his sessions at the World Economic Forum, um, has the opinion that all kinds of enterprise AI work can be done with models which are as small as 20 billion parameters in size. So that is what India is going to target. India wants to target building AI applications and services for the entire world, which kind of created a bit of a furor. A lot of people said that India is again trying to make the same mistake as we did in the IT era. We went after services, didn't go after foundational R&D. But right now, India seems to have determined that as far as our models go, we don't want to build a 5 trillion parameter model. Instead, I think the biggest model being showcased at the AI summit is by Sarvam, which will be a 120 billion parameter model. And that itself, India considers to be a large language model and
No, but
capable of global
look
standards.
at it slightly differently also, Shouvik. You yourself have covered this aspect. Basically, despite all our handicaps, we still have ISRO. Okay, we
Right,
still have the Indian Institute of Science. We still have IITs that are world class. We still have the triple IITs. We still have NIDs. We still have NITs.
right,
So just look at the kind of thing. I Yes, tremendous amount of work has to be done. Okay, I'm not debating that. I'm probably one of the
right,
uh, biggest critics of that, and I've always been. But at the same time, you have to acknowledge and give the devil its due, as they say, wherever the things.
right,
So we are working on those semiconductors. But what I thought, after a very long time, we are doing something very intelligent, is that we are designing the the 2 nanometer, the 5 nanometer, the 3 nanometer chips as a kind of an NVIDIA model where you're outsourcing the manufacturing of it, and you're not bothered about getting those cutting, because that's a waste of time. Setting up a kind of a cutting edge semiconductor fab for instance would cost about anywhere between 20 and 25 billion dollars, and the
right,
gestation period is anywhere between 3 and 5 years. So it's not, sometimes you start wondering whether you would rather spend that kind of money building the infrastructure. We still don't have proper roads, we still don't have proper
right,
sewage systems, and these are important issues, because
right,
everything has to go hand in hand. One cannot be at the expense of the other in a country like India, because we are, regardless of what you want to call ourselves, whether developing, underdeveloped, semi-developed, or developed, whatever you want to
right,
call that, those are just names. But you require a decent quality of life, others people will leave you at some point in time. If they find a better
right,
opportunity, they will migrate to other cities, they will migrate to other countries, and you have to stem that. Just saying,
right,
mouthing platitudes over there, saying that we have got the best of infrastructure, no, that doesn't work, because everybody can see, like you,
right,
when you go back home, how much time you spend in travel. That's very frustrating after all those high level talks that AI is going to change the world and all that. You say, no, but I can't even reach home
right,
properly, and that frustration sort of takes away from the real issues out here. That is important to address. And I think this SLM, the small language models that India is trying to create, is a step in the right direction. I don't know whether you had a chance to look at Bulbul from Sarvam. I looked at it
right,
carefully. Very interesting. From an Indian language perspective, it can easily match any other thing, because for the point of view that the large language models and the voice language models, etc., they were not tailored for Indian languages. So
right,
that's where the edge stands. And with the kind of, the important part, which I think now I'm glad that the Mr. Vaishnav is also talking about it, is that if you have a captive audience of 1.4 billion, then it's important to understand that you have to cater to them, because voice is how most Indians talk. But we have so many dialects, we have so many languages, So what these guys cleverly did with Bulbul was have it in 35 plus voices from guys who are professionals, And I
right.
tried that. I don't know whether you had a chance to try it. I tried it.
I
I
haven't.
was I was finding it very difficult to detect which is a human voice and which is an AI voice. I was getting like two or three right at most. It is actually
Right,
pretty difficult. Yes, would I compare it? I know that the internet went gaga over it, saying that it has beaten 11 labs and all that. No, that's not really true, because in specific audio languages and in the 8 kilohertz frequencies, that is where it has gained an edge. And as far as Indian languages are concerned, so the strengths clearly are there, and we should This is, brings you back to the point how we started, that overhyping a particular thing always involves unnecessary criticism. We have to be very circumspect when we talk about things and say
Right.
these are our strengths. We are the global applications AI hub. We are creating semiconductors hubs. We are getting GPUs, TPUs, CPUs. We are sort of, enhancing our R&D system. Remember that there are 2,000 plus GCCs in the country doing really cutting
Right.
edge R&D. So that in
Right.
itself is your strength. And
Right.
I feel we
Absolutely.
are on a good wicket. It is just that, when we start, trying to overhype things, that we get into that muddle of.
Right.
It's better
Right.
to stay away
No,
from.
absolutely. Absolutely. No, and it's interesting because the other key approach that India's been speaking about is that we don't want to go after the what US is an expert in. We don't want to go after the English first large language models because we can't beat them at their own game. And I think both the government as well as the private sector, including the likes of the Tatas and the Reliance and the Adanis and the L&Ts, are also well aware of it. And which is why they're saying that, we'll develop expertise in non-English languages. We'll start with Indic languages. We'll develop models which understand issues of bias and other nuances in non-English languages, and then we're going to see if we can use a foundational non-English language LLM as a sort of like a digital public infrastructure of sorts, and try and source this as an infrastructure which can be used by other smaller countries who might not be investing so much in AI research around the world, which I think is a pretty interesting approach in terms of trying to have global relevance as a soft power.
Yeah, we,
Uh,
we did it with the India Stack, where
right.
the UPI,
Absolutely.
the digital
UPI.
public infrastructure. So India Stack is today, just for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, is today referred to as the digital public infrastructure. We have done that. So whether it's the UPI, whether it is the ULI, the universal, the unified lending interface, whether it is Aadhaar, whether it is your accounts aggregator, whether it is the health stack, we are doing those things. So it is, yes,
Right.
as far as AI is concerned, the AI stack is far more complex. That is true.
Right.
But it's not that, we never know. Unless you try it, you never know what can be done and what can't be done. So I think we are clearly getting down to these, so one of the economists, Schumacher, um, so don't confuse him with the
Michael Schumacher.
yeah, no, no, absolutely not. So this is E. Schumacher, who used to talk about. He came up with a lovely book many decades back called "Small is Beautiful." So I always remember that particular thing, because when I was studying economics, two things. One is David Ricardo's comparative theory of international trade, where he talks about. So basically, it is that you sell your strengths and buy goods where you can enhance your strengths. If I were to put it very very simply, and
Right.
that's exactly what we are doing today with AI. If we can
Right.
successfully do that without getting our egos inflated and becoming jingoistic, as I said, there's a very very thin dividing line, or lines blur when we talk about nationalism and jingoism. So let's be
Right.
nationalist, but let's not be jingoistic. We understand
Right.
that other countries
Absolutely.
also have strength. So if you want to
Absolutely.
create an Usain Bolt in India, you have to understand that there's a whole infrastructure that has to go. But you have done it in cricket, for instance, right?
Right.
We
Right.
have.
And interestingly, Leslie, I'd like to, since we mentioned India Stack, Sharad Sanghi, who was one of the primary architects of the India Stack,
Sharad
is
Sharma, you mean?
also in the
Sharad Sharma.
yes, and he's also in the AI game as well, and he's also trying to see if so we've got the familiar faces. We've got Nandan Nilekani
Yes.
also as one of the key speakers of the India AI Summit. Bill Gates is going to be down. Bill Gates was instrumental as part of the Aadhaar project as well. And I think we've got a lot of familiar faces who helped build out India's DPIs, as they are now famously known as. So it'll be interesting to see if we can take the applications and services approach instead of the foundational AI approach that the US and China have taken. Because everybody, even at the summit, their opinion is that, India's strength lies in its scale and in its frugal innovation capabilities. And at no point is anyone trying to pretend that we can match up with the kind of capital that an OpenAI and an Anthropic and a Google has at their
Exactly.
disposal.
See, we clearly have our
And
strengths. We should not make this an ego issue.
right,
Uh, I think we're on a good wicket. We'll be able to make it. And the India AI Impact Summit, the mere fact that you have so many world leaders, coming to Delhi, you have so many global CEOs coming to Delhi, shows the importance of this country. Okay, so I
right,
think it's important to capitalize and incorporate the good suggestions that they have, and offer them whatever we have. I think it's a synergistic kind of view. So, viewers and listeners, I think by next week we'll have a clearer idea of what the India AI Summit, AI Impact Summit would have,
right,
managed to glean from all these world leaders and the global CEOs and the kind of conversations. I'm sure Shouvik will be
right,
able to add a lot more value by next week. Hopefully, we'll be able to have that conversation because he's also going to be busy with that event. So if
right,
he's around and if we can get him, we'll pick his brains. Else, we'll always update you in our future episodes. That because this is going to be a very long conversation. This won't be a
right,
conversation that's going to end just with the India AI Impact Summit.
right.
And so that's how it is. So, Shavik, wish
Yes.
you a lovely weekend, and viewers and listeners
Yes,
also a
you
lovely
too, Leslie.
weekend. And please bring us back with those juicy tidbits from the
Yes.
India AI Impact Summit. See you next week. Ciao. Take care. Bye.